I thought this was a perfect opportunity to jump on, answer some questions, and importantly, go through the final 3 FPL drafts going into game week 1 that I'm deliberating right now. I felt like I was locked in this morning with my team. However, as always, we've had some team updates. We've got rumours of potentially Eze going to Man City. We got new signings coming in from big clubs, and it's changing the complexion of our teams as we speak. And I feel like this is going to be the case all the way up until that 6:30 p.m. UK time deadline. So do not be having your team completely locked in right now. So much can happen over the next 22 hours or so. And hopefully in this stream right now, I can answer some of those hot topics and questions that you have on your mind. And hopefully we can get ourselves to a game week 1 team that we're at least content with going into this Friday evening. As always, if you're new around here, please do consider smashing that subscribe button. We are aiming for 17k by the end of the weekend. There is no chance that will happen, but if you aren't already, it'd be amazing to have you on board going into game week 1/game week 2 this season. And of course, if you drop a like on the stream, that is always massively appreciated. So I can see some familiar faces already in the stream. Gamer Dunn, I hope you're doing well. Cheekster, as always. Love and Football Fancy. Laylux, Charlie, Kieran, Yoo-hoo21. Hope you guys are having a great evening so far. Let me know in the chat, how is your team looking? Are you close to having it locked in? I, for one, was close. Now I feel like I'm a million miles off. So we'll go through my team and the 2 other variations that I'm considering right now, which have very, very different structures. And I like both, to be honest with you. So we're going to get into that and, of course, answer all of your questions. So first up, we got one from Love and Fancy Football saying Eze or Gordon. For me, right now, it was always going to be Eze, and I still think he is the better option. However, with the circumstances at Man City, I do think Gordon is starting to emerge, if you could afford it, at 0.5 million as the better option. The one thing I would say is this: I prefer Eze long term if we get a commitment to Crystal Palace. Shorter term, I prefer Anthony Gordon, especially with that opening game against Southampton at home. I think that's better than any of the Crystal Palace's fixtures in the opening 3 game weeks. And it might be worth me actually popping up some of the fixtures on screen right now, just for a bit of a reference point as we're talking through some of these questions, because we also need to talk about what people are doing with their wildcards. A little bit of a spoiler alert: I am pretty certain that I'm set on a game week 4 wildcard. I have been on this for weeks since the game launched, and I do understand people going for a longer term wildcard. And look, the thing I do like about a game week 4 wildcard is you can be flexible about it. And we're going to come on to that in a minute, because I have got a designated slide that we can touch on regarding that, so we will be checking that out. But when we're looking at the fixtures right now, I am looking at game weeks 1 to 3, and what I'm looking at right now is Liverpool is okay. I don't think it's as good as a lot of people are saying. Ipswich away, followed by Brentford at home and Man United away. I wouldn't be surprised if they conceded against Ipswich. It's one of those games against a newly promoted side. I think Liverpool win, but do I think Ipswich could nick a goal? I think they could, definitely. Brentford at home, if they keep Ivan Toney, if they keep Mbeumo, they keep Visser, that isn't necessarily a locked-in clean sheet. And then they go to Old Trafford, which is always a difficult game, no matter what the circumstance Man United is in. So I don't think necessarily Liverpool in the opening 3 game weeks are as essential as everybody is saying, but because they've got Ipswich away and Brentford at home, especially for attacking assets, I feel like it is imperative to have at least one of those in your team. But again, game week 4 onwards is where you really want those assets locked in. Nottingham Forest at home, Bournemouth at home, and Wolves away. And on the subject of Liverpool, this is why I do like the wildcard in game week 4. It means that we can go against Mo Salah for the opening game weeks, which means we can accommodate someone like an Erling Haaland. But it means you're only going without Mo Salah for 3 game weeks. So you can go to Diogo Jota, and you're not owning Diogo Jota thinking to yourself, oh my God, I've got this guy for 6, 7, 8 game weeks. You've only got him in your team for those opening 3. And that's why I feel like going for the game week 4 wildcard is a viable strategy that a lot of people should be considering. Jota or Diaz for the opening 3, wildcard in game week 4 if your team is struggling, and then you can bring Mo Salah into your teams. And of course, around that sort of period with Man City, and let me get that up for you, because Man City are a little bit further down on this list, as I can see. Man City then go into Brentford, Arsenal and Newcastle. So over that period, maybe it'll be an opportunity to move away from those Man City assets in your team and transition to the Liverpool ones that are truly value for our squad. So I really like that for a game week 4 wildcard. In terms of the fixtures as well, it means we can target the Nottingham Forest fixtures if we choose to. But again, Game week 4 onwards, Liverpool followed by Brighton. Don't really want those assets after that period. Fulham long-term are great for investments, so it doesn't really matter what your strategy is. I do think a defender and a midfielder or a forward from Fulham is a good use of your money in your game week 1 squads. And also Newcastle. This is a perfect example of a game week 4 wildcard team to target. I think everybody's going to have Alexander Isak in their team. That's pretty much a given. But a lot of people are scared to invest in Newcastle longer term because they're looking at it thinking, well, I want him for the first 2, but I don't really want it for 3. 4 and 5 can be difficult. 6 isn't great. But if you're on a wildcard 4 strategy, then you might be in a position where you think to yourself, actually, I could target those opening 3, hopefully get lucky against Spurs and move away from those Newcastle players and maybe transition into an Ollie Watkins around that sort of period when the Aston Villa fixtures start to get really, really good. I could see Alexander Isak to Watkins in a game week 4 wildcard being very, very popular. The final couple of teams that I wanted to just highlight here is going to be Chelsea. Opening 3 is getting talked about a lot. People are investing in Chelsea, Palmer and Inkunku. I actually think that's quite a rough start. Man City at home is not ideal. Then, of course, Wolves away. We have no idea what they're going to be like this season. And then Crystal Palace at home, where loads of managers are investing in Crystal Palace thinking that they are the go-to team defensively. And maybe we're going to get proven wrong here and Chelsea do beat them comfortably. But at the same time, that isn't an ideal fixture either for Chelsea. However, after that period, Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, it doesn't get easier. But we've got 3 game weeks to understand which Chelsea players are of value. Maybe Malo Gusto's established himself in that team and he's a brilliant option for our squads. And also whether Nkunku is clearly better value than a Cole Palmer. So all these things put together is a reason why I am leaning towards a wildcard 4 strategy. And I've got a few bullet points here before we come into my 3 teams that I'm currently debating right now. So just to run through it. You can target Spurs, Arsenal, Newcastle without the worry of the long-term fixtures, as we discussed. It means for the short term we can swing against Mo Salah, knowing that he can come back on our teams in game week 4. As I mentioned, game week 4 will have the return of Phil Foden, so we have an alternative to Erling Haaland that we currently don't have in FPL. And that's why I feel like a lot of our hands are being forced to go down the Erling Haaland draft route, because we see the Ipswich game at home, and we don't really have any other way to get a Man City attacker other than Erling Haaland. So I feel like Jota and Diaz are screaming at our faces 5 million cheaper than Salah. And I'm looking at Erling Haaland thinking, well, it's him or Jeremy Doku. And I don't really want to go Doku. So Haaland basically is by default in a lot of people's teams. As I mentioned, it gives us time to assess teams and assets while also swinging against those popular ones in the early game weeks. And lastly, this section here. It means that we can be incredibly aggressive in those opening 3 game weeks when others might be a bit reserved. I think of players like Dominic Solanke. Very, very aggressive move. We haven't seen him in a Spurs shirt, but we're looking to invest 7.5 million in him. If it goes wrong, you get him out of your team in game week 4. But if it goes right, all those managers that didn't get those points are not going to jump on him because, of course, those fixtures have gone and the Spurs fixtures start to take a turn for the worse. So that's why I think being aggressive in the opening 3 game weeks can pay off. And if you get incredibly lucky and the players that you selected hit the ground running, the prices rise and everybody's clambering to get them in their teams, it means that you can then just postpone the wildcard. While I'm talking about wildcarding in game week 4, I'm actually not sitting here saying to you that you have to wildcard in game week 4. More what I'm trying to say is build a team with the expectation of wildcarding in game week 4. So have those Arsenal players, those Spurs players, those Newcastle players. And then once you get to game week 4, if your team still looks great, happy days. You've hopefully capitalised on those points from those teams, and maybe you can make a couple of transfers to move away from 2 or 3 players while maintaining that wildcard, and wildcard later on in the season when others do so. But you've managed to capitalise on those points early doors. And the final point here, we need to remember we get 5 free transfers and we can roll them through the wildcard. So in game week 2, you're going to have 1 transfer. Game week 3, you're going to have 2. Game week 4, your wildcard, so you come to game week 5 still with 2, and then you'll roll into the next one. So you are going to be in a position where I think you can play almost a mini wildcard after the game week 4 wildcard around game week 6, game week 7, or game week 8, whichever you choose, depending on the fixture swings. So that's currently what I'm leaning towards for a game week 4 wildcard. Let's get into my team, but first I just want to dip into the chat, see what questions are being asked, and then we're going to get into my draft. So I just want to quickly put a poll in to see when are you planning to wildcard? Game week 4, game week 6. I'll put other. Just comment if it's other. And then I'll put a don't know, which I think a lot of people are going to say don't know, which is absolutely fine. But I do think it is important just to have in the back of your mind whether you want to have the possibility of wildcarding in game week 4. The reason why I'm saying that is if you say to yourself, I'm totally against wildcarding in game week 4, and you're looking long term, then I would question whether Arsenal, Newcastle, Spurs are really good value for your teams long term. I would start to shift that and say maybe you need to invest in a Liverpool whose fixtures are better long term. So what have we got in the chat here, guys? Layla's saying, hi Nacho, are you worried at all about Nkunku's minutes? Do you think someone like Leon Bailey is better 6.5 million pick? Okay, so Nkunku, spoiler alert, isn't in my current draft. I think Inkunku is a phenomenal option for Chelsea, and he's been one of the standout players in pre-season. But a lot of people are looking at benching Inkunku in game week 1. Then in game week 2 is away against Wolves. Again, by that time, do we know if Victor Osimhen has been signed? How is Pedro Neto coming to that team? How is that going to impact the minutes of other players? So all of a sudden, the Inkunku minutes get a little bit questionable, even though I do think he will have decent minutes in the opening 3. And then in game week 3 at home against Crystal Palace, again, we don't know exactly how his minutes are going to be formed. And that's why I do feel like going against Chelsea for the opening 3 actually isn't a bad strategy. And then we can understand after that period, if you do choose to wildcard in game week 4, which one is actually worth going to. Because in game week 4, if Phil Foden emerges as an option once again, we can come down from Erling Haaland, save ourselves 6 million, get Phil Foden and maybe Cole Palmer into our teams and really double down on those 2 assets that were so phenomenal for us last season. I think that is going to be a very popular move for a lot of managers if they choose to wildcard in game week 4. And it's something that I am currently thinking about in the back of my mind. So Charlie's asking about Eze or Nkunku and save the 0.5 million. Okay, so Eze basically has been in every single team everybody's built ever. 7 million, he's the best by far. You've got risky ones like Martinelli, Trossard, Rashford. Eze just offers you that warm blanket that you know you're getting each and every game week. But the problem now is Alvarez been sold. Oscar Bob broken his leg. Man City in the market for an attacking midfielder / winger / forward. I think Eze ticks all of those boxes now. I'm not sitting here saying that he definitely is going to sign for Man City, but he is that kind of ilk of player that I do think Pep Guardiola probably does respect. And I do think there is a possibility that he does move to Man City. And does that make him a better option being in a Man City shirt? I think the answer is no. I think that actually diminishes him as an FPL player because he's such a talisman in this Palace team. He's just going to be another cog in this Man City machine going forward in those opening game weeks. So I'm not sitting here saying Eze is an avoid, but I'm saying to you, if you're planning on having Eze long-term in your teams, you just have a consideration in your back of mind that he might get sold if the bid is big enough. And Man City do have the money now with that sale of Alvarez. Best 4 million defensive rotations. Okay, let me get this up for you now because this is one of the best tools around, basically. Let's get this up. So when we're looking at rotations, I think a lot of us are just looking at 2 4.5 million defenders to rotate. And we need to look at the best possible ones available to us. So first and foremost, one that I do think is a consideration for a lot of FPL managers is going to be getting a Nottingham Forest player in and potentially someone like a Fulham player. So for example, if you were to go for this rotation, let's say it was Aina and Robinson, you could have Aina in the first week at home against Bournemouth. You could have Robinson in game week 2 at home against Leicester, followed by Aina in game week 3. And then you can have Robinson in game week 4 and 5 if you were planning longer term with your teams. That's definitely a rotation that you could go for. I also think there are other rotations out there that you could play. For example, you could bring in a Newcastle player. And once again, they rotate quite well. So you could have Southampton at home with Lewis Hall, for example. Then you play Robinson in game week 2 and game week 3 away against Ipswich. Followed by, you could play, in this example, Lewis Hall if he retains his spot against Wolves and Fulham in your teams. and then back to Robinson for Nottingham Forest away. So I don't think that's a terrible rotation as well for your squads. I have done a bit of a deep dive on 4.5 million rotating defenders. I do apologise, off the top of my mind, it's a little bit fried. I can't remember exactly those players, so I will update you on that one in tomorrow's preview video, but maybe do check out my previous videos where I did do a bit of a deep dive on the 4.5 million rotating defenders. And there are some great threads out there also on Twitter that you do need to check out. Let me just get back those fixtures a minute. I do apologise. Actually, no, we'll leave it on there a minute. I'm so close, I just feel like I need a few more tips, Corey is saying. Well, hopefully I can help out that one. Corbin, thoughts on Munoz, a good pick? Yeah, so I do think he is a good pick. Let me just get up the fixtures once again for us. So when we take a look at Crystal Palace's fixtures, which you can see are right here. So when we look at the fixtures, Brentford away, I don't think is an amazing fixture. If Ivan Toney stays, if Mbeumo's available, that suddenly looks like a difficult fixture for Crystal Palace defensively. And also we need to remember, how are they reacting right now? Big bids for Gay, bids for Anderson. Is there a little bit of uncertainty in that Crystal Palace team going into game week 1? Followed by that, West Ham at home, who have been very good in the transfer market. I don't think that's a guaranteed clean sheet at all. Then they go away against Chelsea. Say what you will against Chelsea, they do possess the weapons to hurt any team and score against them. And then you've got Leicester at home, which is the ideal fixture, followed by Man United at home and Everton away. Personally, I'm not as bullish on the Crystal Palace defence as others. However, that being said, I do think Henderson in goal at 4.5 million is a good option, just because of the certainty of minutes and what Glasner had done with underlying numbers. He did have a good defensive record when he was in charge. But with Munoz, of course, you are getting that attacking potential, which is an added bonus. So you do need to take that into account. But I think these are actually not amazing fixtures for Crystal Palace. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll be interested to know. And again, guys, if you're enjoying the stream, please do consider dropping a like. We got about 150 in here and only 22 likes. If we can get that boosted up, that is always massively appreciated, as always. George is saying, what's happened to Solanke? Don't think there's anything bad happened there at all. Even in Nacho, double Fulham attack, fine. Smith Rowe, Muniz, or Wood and Smith Rowe, Muniz and Cho instead. Okay, so if you are looking for a bit of a combination, I think Wood and Smith Rowe is the direction that I would go in. Wood's minutes in the opening few game weeks I think are good. And when we take a look at the Nottingham Forest fixtures at the top there, if you're having him for the first 3, Bournemouth, Southampton, Wolves, that is fantastic. The only problem with Wood is I don't think you'll want to rotate him once he's in your squad, so do be a little bit cautious of that. FO Chick is making a really good point here. 3 game weeks is not enough data to wildcard, in my opinion. I think that is a very valid reason to have a bit of a hesitancy about a wildcard in game week 4. And I do absolutely agree with that sentiment. But I also do think the free transfers are still available. I think people are forgetting that. I know a lot of people want to roll their transfers all the way to 5. But if we do get to game week 4, in game week 2, of course, we get 1. If I roll it, I get 2 and 3. And then I have 3 and 4. Doesn't mean that I can't just use 3 free transfers to slightly adapt my team to get to the right team. And then I can postpone my wildcard. What I'm trying to say is, I've got a wildcard game week 4 in mind, just because I really want to capitalise on these opening fixtures. Because I'm seeing a lot of teams right now not having any Arsenal. And for me, I think personally, that is overthinking FPL. Arsenal are one of the few teams that have got complete stability going into this season. They've sold nobody, they've kept all their players, they've made a good investment in Calafleury, and they are on an upward trajectory. One of the best defences, one of the best attacks, opening game against Wolves, who have got bags full of injuries and players sold, and against a Brighton team who have got a new manager and is new to the league, who could be a little bit naive, and an Aston Villa team that I think are not as strong as what they were last season and have been poor pre-season. So I look at that and think, I cannot believe people are ignoring Arsenal. I personally think that is one of the most essential teams to have in your league. And I think if you start to think to yourself, I can go without an Arsenal defender, I can go without an Arsenal attacker, I think that is too much of a risk. And that's why I think hedging yourself and maybe wildcarding in game week 4 then is a consideration for your team if Arsenal don't actually be the team that we were. But I think they're one of the few teams that we can actually rely on going into this game week. Okay, so with all this said, let's get into some drafts. let's get into some drafts. Okay, so this here is an example of a team that I showed in today's video, the one that came out this morning. So I've made some changes to it already, but just for the purpose of this video, to get a bit of an understanding of what direction we can take it. So, as I mentioned, this right here is a team that is focusing on a wildcard in game week 4. So previously I had Raya, but the more I thought about it, I want a piece of that Arsenal defence, actually physical defenders. Gabriel and Saliba are fantastic from set pieces, and I really do think they offer something that Raya just cannot match in a 3-game week period. And of course, 3 game weeks, do I think Gabriel and Saliba are going to score? Probably not, but I want to have that opportunity of getting on the score sheet, and I'm not going to get that with Raya as my goalkeeper. So we've currently downgraded to Henderson as a 4.5 million option. Gabriel in at home against Wolves, Hall at home against Southampton. I'm only looking to have him for 1 game week, and then Pedro Porro away against Leicester. My other 2 defenders is going to be Harwood Bellis and Fulham's Robinson, and I'll show you in a minute how this team looks between game weeks 1 and game weeks 3. In midfield, we have got Saka, Gordon, Diogo Jota and Amad Diallo. Now, I need to caveat this by saying it was previously Oscar Bob. The reason why this team has remained like this is because I was pretty certain on my squad until the Oscar Bob injury, and I'm now starting to think about, is there a 5 million option that can enhance my team? Now, I need to mention this. This team does have 0.5 million in the bank, so I could upgrade Amad Diallo into a 5.5. Maybe someone like a Hudson-Odoi if I wanted to, or an Elanga, and get myself a piece of that Nottingham Forest attack. I think that is definitely a consideration for my squad, and probably a better minutes option than that of Amad Diallo. So one to consider there. But for a 1-game week punt, if, of course, Man United kicking off tomorrow, we get the early team news that he is starting, while it might only be 60 minutes, I do think that is a good differential for game week 1. And it means we can get the power 3 of Solanke, Isak and Haaland. Because I'm planning on a wildcard in game week 4, I do feel like having a piece of Solanke in those opening game weeks is pretty important. So the team would look something like this. Again, Amad Diallo, I think a lot of people are probably chuckling away at themselves right now thinking, why the hell have you got Amad Diallo? So just for the context of the game, let's change this to Hudson-Odoi. That looks probably a little bit safer, doesn't it? So let's put Hudson-Odoi in the team right now. Coming into game week 2, my team would look something like this. So we'd have Henderson at home against West Ham. Not great, not terrible. Gabriel away against Aston Villa. If I'm owning an Arsenal defender, he is playing in every fixture. I'm scared of the Arsenal clean sheet potential. Porro at home against Everton, and then Lewis Hall away against Bournemouth. However, Robinson at home against Leicester is too good to ignore. So Robinson will be coming in for Lewis Hall most likely, unless Arsenal are looking poor defensively, which I cannot see it. I will be playing a back 3. Then, of course, we have got a certain Emile Smith-Rowe on the bench who will be looking to come in, most likely for Hudson-Odoi in that fixture. And then the team will look something like this. The captaincy going on Erling Haaland. And again, when we take a look at the fixtures for game week 2, you can see the ones here that are basically ranked the best down to the worst. Chelsea away against Wolves. Do I really get that scared of not having Inkunku? Not really. Then we've got Crystal Palace at home against West Ham. That could be a little bit dangerous if Eze does remain at Crystal Palace. And again, it's worth noting, I can easily make a change to this team and do Gordon down to Eze in game week 1 if I wanted to, and just have that as my 7 million option and be done with it. But I do think now that the rumours of Gordon leaving have dampened a little bit, I think I'm starting to realise what an unbelievable option Gordon was last season, and how he's going to be a great option once again for Newcastle. And I do think his minutes are pretty good as well. So right now Gordon is in just because I don't see Liverpool paying the money for Anthony Gordon. And the way that I've seen him talk in podcasts and stuff, this is a guy that is really, really switched on and so focused on being the best he possibly can. And I don't think he's going to be affected by this. I think he'll come straight into that Newcastle team and deliver right from the bat. And I feel like I want that sort of character in my team. So he's currently in there. And we look at the rest of the fixtures. Fulham at home against Leicester. I've got two pieces of that in Robinson and Smith-Rowe. Liverpool at home against Brentford. Well, I've got Diogo Jota in that. Haven't got another piece of that pie, which is a bit of a problem. And then we've got Man City at home against Ipswich. No Vardy, which could be a concern. But I prefer the Arsenal defence right now. And then, of course, we've got Man United away against Brighton. So I'm pretty content with my team for game week 2. And again, the plan would be to roll the transfer. Then we get into game week 3. And my team would look something like this. And of course, this is where we will stumble across a few problems having Newcastle and Spurs assets. So we would have double Newcastle against double Spurs, which is not ideal. So what I would likely do is potentially look to bring in Hudson-Odoi. If some of these players don't look ideal, maybe Solanke out for Hudson-Odoi against Wolves. If things don't go too well for Solanke, and maybe he looks like a bit of a minutes risk. And also if Newcastle look really, really strong, Lewis Hall could come in for game week 3 potentially at home against Spurs. But again, that doesn't look completely ideal. So that will be how the team rolls for the opening 3 game weeks. And then, of course, coming into game week 4, just to give you a bit of an understanding of what the team would look like, we'd have a good fixture for Henderson at home against Leicester. Spurs against Arsenal is not good for my team, it's worth noting at all, and probably would in itself force a wildcard early doors for my team. But I'd have Diego Jota at home against Forest, Haaland, Isak. The rest looks good. So I could just make a couple of transfers maybe to improve my team. But all in all, the way my team's setting up, I do like the way it's set up here. The negatives. No Vardy in the team. But of course, if he isn't playing that overlapping left-back role, do I really want him? I think I can go without him for the opening few game weeks. No Liverpool defensive coverage. I could bring in someone like a Quansah as a replacement for Lewis Hall. But is he offering really anything offensively? I don't think so. And Ipswich away and Man United away, I personally don't think are guaranteed clean sheets either. So that's how the team's looking. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm going to show you my second team in a minute, where we got some downgrades in the forward departments. And I can see also we have got a super chat here from Albin Frederick. Thank you so much for that, mate. So he's asking, would for Pedro Porro and Rogers to Minter stick/change? Okay, so if you didn't know already, Brighton have made a bid for, oh God, is it Rutter from Leeds? So they've gone for a bid for him, and it looks like that is going to happen, which could hinder João Pedro's minutes longer term. So I do think João Pedro is a bit of a risk now. So I prefer Chris Wood. And if you're going to go for Chris Wood, I am a little bit concerned about Minter's minutes as well. They've just planned on signing a winger as well for Brighton. So I think maybe Rogers is a safer bet in that Aston Villa team. But I'd also say to you, maybe if you have got the money to go 5.5 million, maybe look at someone like a Smith Rowe. That is someone that I would definitely consider for your team. So a Wood-Smith Rowe combination actually rotates really well. And I do think both of those are great for their respective teams. And thank you once again for the super chat there. By the way, guys, for anyone that's actually wondering, quite a few people are asking about like additional stuff. If you do want to check it out, you can see it here. I've just put it in the chat. I've just pinned it. People have been DMing me about my team and stuff. If you really want extra content, check it out. Pinned tweet there about Patreon. Again, it's only for the 0.0001% that are actually interested in it. But if you are, we have an exclusive WhatsApp chat where we talk about all FPL stuff, team stuff, answer Q&As. But it's obviously completely down to you guys what you want to do there. Is Trent worth the money? I think he definitely can be, but in the opening game weeks, you know you're taking a little bit of a risk with him in the team. I don't think they're guaranteed clean sheet fixtures. I think they're good fixtures, but I don't think they are necessarily the best. I think game week 4 is where I truly want Trent in my team. Thomas is saying he's punting on Ahmad to start most games. I personally wouldn't have that approach. I would look at it and think, I want Ahmad for the first game, and that's it. I don't think we can confidently sit here and say that he is going to be guaranteed long-term a pick. Why no Eze, Gabriel was saying, main reason being is because I'm a little bit worried about if Man City come in for a big bid and actually pull him away from Crystal Palace. I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen, but that rumour, that possibility makes me think I'd rather go for someone like an Anthony Gordon, who does look like he's potentially a safer bet now that the Liverpool rumours have actually started to disappear. I don't think they're going to put the money up for him. Yes, Nico, deadline stream tomorrow. We are looking around 4 p.m. deadline stream tomorrow. Saliba or Gabriel long term? Look, I personally think, and I've said this since day one, that we are seeing Calaflori come in as a left back for Arsenal. I think Arteta is basically trying to match what Pep done. He's trying to get big defenders in, ball playing defenders that can operate in fullback areas and defend wide areas. Now, playing Calaflori at left back, Gabriel is one of the best defenders in operating in wide areas. Very, very good in 1v1 situations. So I don't think Gabriel's position is going to get displaced. However, I do think if anybody's going to lose his place in the defence, it would be Gabriel to Calaflori. So for that reason, if you want long term, I would just go safe on Saliba and be done with it. But I think Gabriel has a higher goal threat and he gets fouled more based on last season's numbers, meaning his bonus baseline is going to be a lot better based on the rule changes this season. Prefer Vardy to Porro with your spare 0.5. That's a really good point, actually, something I didn't consider. So with my team that you can see on your screens, one thing I could do is, for example, change Hudson-Odoi back to Ahmad, because I only need it for 1 week, and then potentially build a team something like this. And I can't lie, when I build this team like this, I think that looks good. But my question is, why don't I just do this? Arsenal are by far the best defence in the league. I expect them to continue this trend this season. Does it not make sense for me just to have both centre-backs once again? It was such a great strategy last season. Maybe it could pay off once again. I need to know your opinion, guys. Let me get a poll going. What would you rather? Let's have a look at this. What would you choose? What would you pick? Worst grammar ever, I do apologise. What would you pick? Just ignore that. So would you rather have double Arsenal defence, or would you have Gabriel plus Gvardiol? And remember, this is only game weeks 1 to 3. Let me know your thoughts on that there, guys. Between game weeks 1 and 3, what would you rather have? Double Arsenal defence or Gabriel and Vardy? I'll be super interested to know what your thoughts are there. Spicy Toast Edits, what a great name, by the way, is saying, should I sell Watkins? I don't think it's necessarily as clear-cut as, yes, you should sell him. But the reason why a lot of people are looking to actually not have him is because of this. He hasn't played any minutes in pre-season and the opening fixtures are not ideal. That is the main reason why people are looking to ignore him in the opening few weeks and then potentially looking to move from Isak to Watkins once the fixtures swing for both teams. So it isn't a case of Watkins being a bad option. It's just a case of basically Watkins is more expensive than Alexander Isak and he's looking like one of the best options available. That is the main reason why people are looking to move away from Watkins right now. Still a good option, but I'm not seeing enough right now to justify him over someone like an Alexander Isak. Now, while we're going through the questions, guys, I want to bring you on to draft 2 a minute. Okay, so this is draft number 2, another one that I'm deliberating right now. So this one's slightly different. The changes that we've made. We've downgraded Solanke to Chris Wood. Oh, also, in terms of goalkeepers, sorry, I'm a little bit all over the shop here. Daniel Bentley at 4 million, I do think is the best 4 million goalkeeper available. There's a few rumours going around that Jose Sa could be sold for Wolves, meaning Bentley, maybe in the short term, could emerge as a 4 million option while they try and find an emergency goalkeeper for them. So just a heads up, 4 million Bentley probably is worth being your goalkeeper just on the off chance that he steps in. So this is an example of another team here. 0 in the bank. The planted wildcard a little bit early, but no Solanke. So we're going down to Chris Wood, who arguably has better fixtures as it is. Eze comes into the team. We've got Lewis Hall, we've got Porro, we've got Gabriel still. Inkunku makes himself back into the team. So a few changes here, but the team looks pretty well balanced, I do feel, nonetheless. I still think we can early doors wildcard. When we come into a few game weeks, game week 2, again, we're going for double Arsenal defence, which might not be ideal for some, but I do really back their defence. We got Lewis Hall away against Bournemouth. Isn't the worst, isn't the best. Smith Rowe at home against Leicester feels like he is a player that needs to come in. The problem with this and having Chris Wood is you can't really sub him out away against Southampton. So my question is, who would Smith Rowe actually come in for in this team? Because there's no way of getting rid of Bukayo Saka. And if I'm only in Inkunku, I've got to start him away against Wolves. So I'm already seeing a few issues here with how I would integrate Smith Rowe into this team. And when we come into game week 3, team looks good. We play Leicester concert away against Leicester. Smith Rowe potentially would come in for Diogo Jota or Eze, depending on how they get on in the season. And the team would look something like this. And again, I feel like this team's pretty well balanced here. It can get us to game week 3 at least with good fixtures intact, pretty well functioned. And I feel like it's a good balance of players here. We've got Inkunku in case he does explode as an option for our team. So let me know your thoughts on this squad here. I'll bring it back to game week 1 just to give you an idea on what it looks like. That one there. Double Arsenal defence, only good if you wildcard in game week 4. Yes, all the teams that you're seeing here is on the premise of wildcarding in game week 4. And for those that are maybe wondering why I'm planning a wildcard in game week 4, few points here. I've covered them off, so I won't go in detail. You can quickly just rattle them off there. But I just feel like you can go for those teams that have brilliant fixtures in those opening few game weeks. Then maybe others are going to avoid because they're looking at more of a long-term horizon. But for me, Arsenal, one of the most consistent teams in the league. I want a piece of that team. Spurs, I feel like could be on an upward trajectory, so I want a bit of that. And Newcastle, with those home games, are too good to ignore, so I can't really move away from those as well. And I do apologise, anyone that's watching right now, I'm sweating like a pig. It's about 1,000 degrees in this room. I do apologise. Let me get back to this team a minute for you. Yeah, I'm looking like a sweaty mess, guys. I do apologise. Is Savinho a good option? Okay, so I've spoken about this in previous videos. So Savio's not even coming up. Where are you at, Savinho? Oh, it's because it's got the little bit there. Okay, so currently in 0.5% of teams. This is a perfect example of a player that you don't need to be the first one to own him. If he does well and he gets a 20-pointer, nobody owns him, so it's not going to impact you negatively. On the flip side, if you're one of those 0.5 that owns him and he gets benched for 3 games in a row, you are in some serious trouble here at 6.5 million. So please do avoid Savinho. You don't need to be the first one to own him. You can be the one that owns him later down the line. Maybe you've missed a couple of hauls, but nobody else is having them hauls either. And I just think it's too much of a risk. And there's a lot of players like that. I would put maybe Martinelli in that category. You could be the first one to have him at 7 million and he might go off. But not many people are going to have those hauls. And it's not really going to negatively impact you. But the risk of being the first mover on that player could be quite high if he continues the trend that we saw last season. So I actually want to see something before actually going for those sorts of players. And now brings up another super chat. Thank you so much, mate. That is very, very kind. Rogers to Gibbs White, who has penalties, and Wood to a 4.5 striker. So currently you're on about doing Rogers and Wood versus Gibbs White and a 4.5 million striker. So I think the big thing here that we need to consider here is you're moving away from Rogers, who is expected to have decent game time, and Chris Wood, who is going to have solid game time, for Gibbs White and a player that is not going to get any minutes. And for that reason, I think Rogers and Wood is a much better choice for your team. It gives you balance. I think it's actually stronger. And I think Wood is equally a better option than that of Gibbs White. Going for something like a 4.5 million option, I think, is a bit of a risk. OP Talent, thank you very much for the super chat as well. Really, really appreciate that. Flecken and Henderson rotating. So we need to get that up on the screens for everybody to see. Well, we're very, very kind for everybody with the super chats. I really do appreciate it. So Flecken. So hopefully you can see this on your screens here. What I'm doing right now is using the Fantasy Football Fix rotation tool to see what those fixtures would look for you. So you're currently asking, should you do Flecken and Henderson rotating plus a Saliba/Gabriel and a 4 million, which would probably be a Harwood Bellis, for example, or Raya and a 4 million, which is absolutely fine, Munoz and Hall rotating. So first up, Flecken and Henderson rotating is good. You get Palace at home, West Ham at home, Southampton at home, Leicester at home. Game week 5 is an ideal. Game week 6, I think, is a toss of a coin. And then, of course, Wolves at home, followed by Forest away. So that's a really nice combination to rotate. And I really do like Saliba and Gabriel. I prefer them over David Raya. On your other hand, you're saying Raya and a 4 million goalkeeper plus Munoz and Hall rotating. So if we look at that rotation, so Munoz and Hall rotating, again, I need to ask the question, is this going to be a long-term move for your team? Because if it's going to be long-term, I would be a little bit concerned. The reason being is, if Newcastle sign Mark Gahey, we could then see Dan Burn move to left-back potentially, and that is going to hinder some game time for Lewis Hall. What you're getting here with the rotation is most likely Lewis Hall in game week 1, Munoz in game week 2, neither are great in game week 3. Then we're having Munoz for 4, probably Hall for 5, Munoz in 6. For me, I actually, even though I don't like rotating goalkeepers, prefer you going for Henderson and Flecken rotating plus Saliba and a 4 million defender. I think you're on about that rather than option 2, personally. But I see animations there saying option B, which is quite interesting. Again, thank you so much for the super chat. And Spicy Toast is saying, anyone know the website that you see your team in future game weeks? Okay, so basically, that is what you're on about here. So basically, this is one of the most underrated tools in the history of FPL. Okay, so basically, this is the official website. But what you can do is if you have a free Fantasy Football Fix account, which is totally free to set up, you can then download the free Google Chrome extension called FPL Plus by fantasyfootballfix.com. It integrates with the official site and it gives you a planner where you can build up to 5 drafts. You can go forward 5 game weeks, and also it integrates the price changes tool, which is so important in the opening game week. So for me, I don't actually use any external websites. I just log into the official site and literally have everything here available. Again, I'm not even like promoting this. It is just legitimately one of the best tools available that a lot of people don't use, and they use external sources. But this is an unbelievable tool that you need to check out. It's called FPL Plus as a Google Chrome extension. And again, guys, if you are enjoying the stream, please do consider dropping a like. As I said, we've got an audacious goal of hitting 17k before that game week 1 deadline. We are about 20 hours away from that, and we're currently about 700 short. So I appreciate we're not going to hit that goal, but if you're not subscribed, you're enjoying what you're watching, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. It's always massively appreciated. And we're going to be going for another 10 minutes or so. So if you have any questions, please do get them in. I'm just going to give you one last draft to ponder. And that's going to look something like this. So this option here looks at going no third forward, going for 2 up top in Isak and Erling Haaland. Henderson in goal, quite a bit spent in defence with Gabriel, Hall, Pedro Porro, but we get Trent Alexander-Arnold into the team. Saka, Inkunku, Eze and Diogo Jota with Smith Rowe and Harwood Bellis on our bench, which I don't think is terrible. It's worth noting. I don't think it is terrible. So what are your thoughts on this draft, guys? This is my least favourite, but it does shoehorn Trent Alexander-Arnold into our teams. Looking at it through the next few game weeks, we probably look at a starting 11 like this, which is absolutely fine. And then coming into game week 3, things start to get a little bit more difficult, but I still think the team looks okay. Means we can have a Liverpool asset in Trent. We can still have some decent options. Let me know your thoughts on that. I'll be super interested to know. What I'm going to do is try and build on stream a quick Salah and Haaland draft. We're going to try and fly through this because I do know a lot of people are deliberating this. So, of course, if you're going to go Mo Salah, you've got to make serious sacrifices elsewhere in your team, which is probably going to lead to things like that going down to a Kwanzaa, Saka going down to an Eze, maybe using the funds to downgrade this to Inkunku, and obviously getting rid of Ahmad to maybe a, 7 million option is not too bad at all. We could even get someone 7 million. Maybe an Mbeumo, if you wanted to go there. There's a lot of different options available. Of course, I haven't got some of the big guns here, but this is an example of a team that you definitely could get to, and I don't think it's terrible at all. We got Salah, we got Haaland, we got an Arsenal defender. That could even move to a Vardy if you really want it to be. We can rotate the Liverpool defender. We got Hall, we got Robinson in. Powerful midfield, front three. Don't mind that, building it very, very quickly. Capri Wilson, let me check your comment out now. Great teammate, love the setup. I've heard Trippier's on his way to Saudi, so Livramento might be a safe and Newcastle fullback. And Fulham manager has said ESR needs time to be fully fit for 90 minutes. That's a really good point. I did see the quote about Smith Rowe. The one thing I would say is maybe game week 1 is a perfect opportunity for those minutes to get built against Man United. So benching him in game week 1 isn't a massive problem. And hopefully come game week 2, that might be his first start in that favourable fixture. But I definitely do agree, Smith Rowe does have his risks to him. He isn't just an automatic pick in a lot of people's teams, but I think we all know there is definitely a talent there at 5.5 million. But again, it comes down to it. Do we want to be the first ones to own him? The problem with Smith Rowe is the fixtures are bloody damn good, it's worth noting. Like when we look at them, Leicester, Ipswich, West Ham, really, really good fixtures. But I do get your point there 100%. And I need to see Trippier go before I actually believe it. But Livramento could be the one to go to potentially while others are going for Lewis Hall. Is Isak injured? I don't think so. Maybe I should check a minute. Guys, let me know if there's anything in there. Maybe I've missed something regarding Alexander Isak. And by the way, let me put my official team up right now because this is what we're currently leaning on coming into the season. What are we saying? Guys, I can't really see anything. So I'm just going to say that Alexander Isak probably isn't injured. But again, I might be missing something there. No Haaland or Salah are going to make it spicy this season. Digital Mayhem, I absolutely love the audacity of going without those two. I love it. Do you think you now or even Evanilson could be a differential? Again, perfect opportunity to monitor those players. Don't be the first one to buy them. Wait and see how they get on. Isak is a must-have. Totally agree. Palmer, Odegaard, and Smith Rowe, or Saka, Nkunku, and Solanke. BJ saying, what a great name. I think you stitched me up there, by the way. Palmer, Odegaard, and Smith Rowe, or Saka, Nkunku, and Solanke. Wow. 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 Probably just going to say the first and just think that Cole Palmer's going to hit the ground running, to be honest with you. Deacon, opinion on the front three of Isak, Watkins and Haaland. It's a lot of money. I would love to know what the rest of your team looks like. Having Watkins just feels like a little bit too much money going into those opening few fixtures. But look, Watkins has proved us wrong, scoring in pretty much every fixture last season. My main concern with Watkins, just so if people aren't aware, and I'm sure people are aware, 228 points is outrageous of a season. It's ridiculous. But 19 goals from 16.5 XG is absolutely fine. That looks great for this season. 18 assists from a 4 expected assists. Like, that just ain't happening again. It just ain't happening. So he either needs to rack up 25 goals or he needs to somehow maintain this outrageous disparity between assists and expected assists to get anywhere near a 200-point season once again. So for me, I think Watkins is going to be a great option once again. But West Ham away, who have bolstered really well this summer, and then Arsenal at home, I would much rather wildcard him in game week 4 if I've seen enough for this fixture run here, rather than start with him in my teams, personally. Jonas, I've just joined. Are you just opting to avoid Eze, or is there just some news that might come out? Title caught my attention. Okay, so yeah, I do apologise. Probably a bit of a clickbait title. So for me, right now, I think Eze is a little bit of a risk. With Man City clearly in the market for a player that can play on the wing, play central, play as a forward, I think Eze is a little bit of a concern for our teams. And he suddenly goes from an absolute 100% lock to, for me, close to 50% whether he's going to be in my team or not. That's the only reason. Is there any actual news? No. No official news on Eze. And Henry's asking, is Eze essential? I would say yesterday he was. Now he's not essential. But of course, it depends how you view the potential transfer that could happen in the coming days. But again, it's all speculation right now. Okay, guys, I promised myself I was going to do an hour on this stream, and I've got to stick by it because let's just say I've done a lot of content over the last few weeks and I'm getting very, very, very tired. So as you can see, I need to keep my voice for the big day tomorrow as well. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to be back tomorrow. We've got a little bit of content lined up. First and foremost, tomorrow morning, we got my final team thoughts where hopefully I'll have my team sorted, and a little bit of an update on just general hot topics that are being asked. So we're going to be covering those off in tomorrow morning's video, hopefully be with you around 8 a.m. Then 4 p.m. is going to be the game week 1 deadline live stream where we're going to be going through my official team, answering all your questions, having early Man United lineup 100% will be out, and a wrap up on the press conferences as well. So we'll definitely be doing that. And then game week 1 will be here. Alba's just dropped another super chat, my friend. Very, very, very generous. Have 0.5 million, Rogers 2. Somebody already have ESR/stick. Okay, so if you already have Smith Rowe, that would be my preference. I think Rogers longer term is a better option. The one that I would be looking at 5.5 million would actually be Hudson-Odoi for the short-term fixtures. That's the only 5.5 million that I do think is viable for our teams. Otherwise, I would stick for Rogers and look to invest that 0.5 million elsewhere in your squad. But thank you once again for the super chat, my friend. So, FPL Chicken saying 1 hour rookie numbers. It is, my friend. I do apologise. I'll try and do an 8-hour deadline stream next time. Right. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. I'm going to wrap it up now because my voice is going. And I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning with the final day. And game week 1 deadline will be here. Thanks so much, guys. Have an amazing evening. Take care. And I'll see you very, very soon.